Welcome to Center Stage. My name is Mark Gordon. Doug Hemphill has been making movies sound sweet since he worked as a mix recordist on Apocalypse Now. Later, he would receive an Academy Award for Best Sound for The Last of the Mohicans and Dune, Part 1. In 2013, Hemphill received a nomination for Best Achievement in Sound Mixing for The Life of Pi. A few days before the Academy Awards, he called me on the show to discuss working on The Life of Pi and other films. Stay tuned as we go center stage with Doug Hemphill, the man behind the sound. You've worked on almost every film, every good film that's been made over the last 20 years, haven't you?
Oh, I think you're going a little too far there.
Except for I didn't get that Prometheus thing, I got to admit, but it sounded good. I just didn't.
Yeah, no, it sounded very good. I love working with Ridley. He's a great guy, so he's terrific. But I've been lucky enough to work on some good films, and I love storytelling. I love stories, and I love trying to use sound to tell stories. So.
What kind of impact does sound have on the image that we see?
Well, it's pretty significant in the sense that we all, have sound memories and little things that we take for granted. That it's very simple to create a mood or a feeling with sound. I think the best example, my friend Gary Rydstrom, who's a great sound designer, said if you could have a recording or a picture of your great-great-grandmother, great-great-great-great-grandmother, what would you choose? And a lot of people would say recording because you'd want to hear that voice. Sound is really important to people. I certainly travel through a film through the actors' voices, and for people out there in the audience who don't quite know what I do, it's pretty arcane. The way a cameraman or woman racks focus on the image to determine what they want you to look at, that's sort of what I do with sound. It's the same sort of thing.
And really, because it's not just focusing on the music aspect, but it's dialogue, it's sound effects, all those things, right?
Exactly, and I work with a team of people. My partner Ron Bartlett mixes with me, and it's quite we have hundreds and hundreds of tracks and quite a lot going on. But the thing is, it's also another aspect of what I do. It's not really a technical job. That's sort of invisible to us. We're ultimately audience, putting ourselves into the movie and engaging in the film and responding to what's up there on the screen, not a bunch of knobs and technical things.
How did it start out for you?
In the beginning of the
how did it start out for you? How did you get into this tract of being a re-recorder?
Well, it's funny because, obviously in life, different doors open, different doors close. I was a musician when I was a kid in the Bay Area, and I fell in love with film, and I went to USC film school, and while I was there, I got hired on Apocalypse Now, and left while I was still a student, and got to work under Walter Murch, one of the great sound designers in film. And I was very, very lucky. So that's how I started.
What were some of the things that Murch taught you that you could utilize later in your career?
Well, one of my favorite things that Walter's ever said, he's said many great things, but he once said that it's a great honor to have an audience watch your movie because they're allowing you to dream for them. And I just thought that was so beautiful, and that's an inspiring thing to say for people who work on movies and try to make them as good as possible for the audience. And Walter is a guy who, Apocalypse Now is one of the great soundtracks of all time. He's somebody who really knows how to focus and with great clarity what he wants an audience to be listening to in a very aesthetic and sensual way, too, with sound.
You talk about inspiration, and that's one thing that resonated with me with Life of Pi is the story is very inspirational. How did it resonate with you when you first started getting into this material. What was the response that you had about working on this film and in knowing that perhaps you're really onto something substantial?
Well, it's funny because, as I said, I told Ang Lee, sometimes you watch a movie and you watch it again and it doesn't quite have the same impact. And Life of Pi has always had a significant impact on me every time I watch it. It's such a beautiful piece of work. And from the opening credits with Michael Dana's music with Pi's Lullaby, I mean, I'd be sitting there at work finding myself in tears, listening to this music. And it's such a beautiful piece of work. And it's hard to describe what it's like working on a film like this, because when we're working on it, we don't have all the visuals done. All this, what's called CGI, isn't completed yet. So we're sort of going on faith. The pieces are coming together. The final music's coming in that Michael Dana's done, and sound design that Eugene Garrity did. So we're going on faith, and I have to say that Ang Lee brings out the best in people. He brings out the best emotions in people with his leadership, and we knew wherever we were going, it was going to be okay because of Ang.
Do you think that because of the way the evolution of technology, that it's the right time for this film? Because in some ways, the CGI was fairly seamless. It wasn't, you really felt like you were there with a tiger. You're really there on that raft with that young man.
Yeah, this film couldn't have been made. I've worked on so many films and seen the technology move along, and there's no question this is a benchmark. The way that Ang's used 3D, the way that we've done some of the mixing in Atmos, Dolby Atmos. But it's still, it's still about ideas and emotions and feelings. But the technology has allowed us to really focus and illuminate those feelings and ideas. So, yeah, I don't think it could have been done even a few years ago.
When you're
there's the old axiom in Hollywood, don't shoot a film on water, don't shoot a film with kids, don't shoot a film with animals, don't shoot a film that's heavily dependent story-wise for CGI, and don't shoot a film about the meaning of life. And Ang has done all of those in one fell swoop. It's amazing. He really has amazing courage.
Do they, when you're working on a film like this, do they test the sound with an audience to see, what is working and what can be improved?
Well, it's funny because when we started on the mix of Life of Pi, we did a little temp mix, and we'd have friends and family screening on the Fox lot. And then we were tasked with making the New York premiere, which was considered another temporary mix, so to speak, that would open the film at the New York Film Festival. And we were all, working with Ang's leadership and on instinct and kind of racing towards this premiere. And, they showed it in New York, and Ang came back and said, well, this is really it. I'm happy. That's it. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. What we did through inspiration and very quickly was very, very good. So
now you've been nominated several times and won an Oscar for sound with The Last of the Mohicans. What is the criteria for being nominated, and then ultimately what pushes a film over to a victory for an Oscar?
I don't know, but when you find out, let me know. No, it's on a basic level, your peers in your branch, the sound branch, and in my case, nominate the films for best sound, and then it goes to the General Academy, the largest branch of which is the actors. So that's how it works.
What kind of challenges went into working on this film? And I'm sure that each film presents a specific challenge. What were some of the challenges with Life of Pi?
Well, I think primarily keeping it very simple. And if it wasn't telling the story or making the film better, it didn't belong in the soundtrack of the movie. I think that was the biggest challenge, and hopefully a challenge that we met. Even the storm sequence, you could consider, there's two storm sequences. The first one where he loses his family, where Pi loses his family. I mean, you could view that as a big action scene, but that's not how I viewed it. It's sound-wise contained within the film. It's the story point, as he's losing his family, and it's frightening and horrific, but it's not an action sequence, and I didn't mix it like one. So.
When I think of that scene, I think of the zebra, and how the zebra jumps off of the ship and ultimately breaks its leg. But there's so much chaos in the film at that point, and it really, the film has so many different levels. At one point, it's kind of sad, and then at one point it's uplifting. At one point, it's looking at really how far can a person go to rise above who they really think they are.
Exactly. And it's obviously the tiger within us, and there's a lot of things going on in the film. And
did you look at the at the film? Did you look at the film as an allegory when you're working on it?
I'm very I could certainly view it as that, and there's no question that's going on. But I'm very direct in the way I look at something, and very emotional in the way I view a film. So no, I don't. And there's not a lot of intellectualization when I'm watching a movie. Even when I go to a theater, I'm really responding on a more emotional level.
Yeah, I love to suspend my disbelief, even though I've seen a million of them. I really want to go, and I don't want to look at it with a critical eye. I want to be transported. I want to be on that raft. And I want to go, because that's part of the great things about movies. I mean, did you think when you were working on them that you would lose that sense of wonderment?
I always go with my instincts. I always go with my initial reaction to a film, and I try to remember that, because you can, build on multiple experiences where you sort of go off the rail, and you can't forget what it was like the first time you saw it and how you felt. It's really important.
What is?
And of course, with a guy like Aang, I mean, he's right there all the time, and he is so focused and so nurturing and collaborative. I mean, he really is an amazing human being.
At what point do you realize that you're just nailing it? Where you're making these decisions, and you get that kind of feedback. And what is that process like for you?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I'm sort of a performance mixer where I like to roll and see it in real time and perform the sound in real time. So it's more like being an actor, where a director will say, I like that performance, or I don't like that performance you did, Doug. And so that's sort of how it works. I mean, I've done films where, for instance, Massacre Valley and Last of the Mohicans, that's our first run-through. That's the first time we ran through it. And of course, I mean, there's what we call premixes, so we've sort of organized the material and done some work on it, but that's the first time through. And it's the same with the storm sequence in Master and Commander. That's the first pass. So sometimes you just fly by the seat of your pants and something great comes out of it. It's just a performance. So.
Well, speaking of which, another film that you worked on that you were nominated as well was Walk the Line.
Oh, I love that film.
Oh, yes, I love that movie too. But that's a totally different vibe as well. Those are a lot of like concert sequences, and it's more, it's more like about this country western star.
Yeah, with a lot of emotion in there. I mean, Johnny Cash's life was very tempestuous. So, I mean, I love that scene where June Carter says, "This is your second chance." Mm. On the bed, when he's sort of detoxed from drugs and God knows what all, and she looks at him and says, "This is your second chance." That's an amazing scene. Oy.
Do you find that, because I've interviewed a lot of directors, and some of them really look at a film as if it's a score, like a score, a soundtrack, or a musical score. Do you find that filmmakers that you've worked with that have that sense of aesthetic, are they easier to understand the language of their craft?
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard to explain, but I think there's a lot of unspoken synergy, or whatever you want to call it, tacit understanding among creative people. And there's, we're in a little room mixing this film. It's the end of the line. It's really one of the last things you do in a movie. God knows the director's done so much hard work and maybe gotten 30 or 40% of what they intended on the screen. So now they're in this little sanctuary. We're mixing the film, and there's a lot of tacit understanding, a lot of things that don't have to be spoken, words that don't have to be spoken, or ideas, and you just bring what you have to the table, and it's everybody bouncing off each other that makes it good or bad.
The technology has changed since the early days of Apocalypse Now. Tell me about some of the advances in sound recording and mixing that have really opened up your palette and really given you those tools to really, like you say, you're talking about the emotional angst of a film, or being able to create those sequences, like the storm sequence.
Well, a good example would be, Dolby has just come out with the Atmos system, which is, anywhere from, 45 to 60 something speakers. And we talked about doing a sort of a separate additional mix for Life of Pi and Dolby Atmos. So we sort of, played around with it and got some ideas together, and then brought Aang on the stage of Zanuck Theater at Fox and played some of it for him and said, well, what do you think? And, we all agreed that we would use it to serve the story in the film and not be doing it for some, new speaker system in and of itself. And Aang said, I think we can give the audience an embrace of empathy with these speakers. And I know that sounds really abstract, but when you hear Life of Pi and Dolby Atmos, there's no question. It is enveloping you. It's like going to the next level of speaker systems in theaters. It's pretty significant. And Michael Dana, the composer, we had, Ron Bartlett in particular, had moved some of the music out into the room. You have overhead speakers, and you have all these speakers going down the walls. I mean, it's an amazing system. And he had moved some of the music out into the theater and moved it around. And Michael Dana, the composer, wanted to go even further and did. And it's a great result. It's a pretty impressive system.
Speaking of impressive, your credits once again. I'm just looking down, and there's one film that you worked on that I really loved, Immortal Beloved.
Oh God, Bernard Rose. That was, I got to tell you, going to work every day and listening to Beethoven. Oh my God.
But you know what it was about that? It's the scene when Gary Oldman, who played Beethoven, when somebody comes, and I don't know who it is, but he wants to find out about Beethoven's music. And he goes, I just don't understand, what is that? And Beethoven, obviously I'm just kind of remembering it, but he says, that's the sound of a person waiting for his lover and she's late. Or remember that scene where it was that quartet piece or something. And you really got a sense of, God, this guy just didn't compose music, but this was his heart and soul, in these musical notes.
I know. That was an amazing film. And Gary Oldman was really, really remarkable in it. I love that film.
Yeah, and then the Ode to Joy, when he deaf at that point, and he's conducting, and just really, really beautiful. Are there some films that resonate with you more than others that you've worked on?
Oh, of course.
Which ones?
Oh gosh, I'm not going to do that.
They're like your children, huh? You can't do a Sophie's. You can't do a Sophie's Choice in this one.
No, I can't. That would be too hard. There's some really great ones. I Almost Famous. I mean, there's.
Yeah, well,
there's a lot of movies that are just like the end of Jerry Maguire. I just bawl like a baby. I can't take it.
And then I love the Fabulous Baker Boys.
Oh, I love that film. I just showed my son that film, and It's so beautiful. Steve Klovis, great writer, great director.
And there was something that I just love the kind of the simplicity of that movie and that relationship. It was really this love triangle, where you have the brothers, and then you've got this woman that comes on, and just how I just love the dynamics of that, and then also kind of the style. I just love the style of that film.
Yeah, and Gruesom's music, oh my gosh, it's gorgeous.
What constitutes success for you, Doug?
It's about the social aspects of mixing a movie. I mean, that's what it's all about. Whether the film is successful or that, I hope that every film is successful. I mean, but it's about being in a social environment with people, with a small number of people on the stage, and really sharing creativity with people and ideas, and being collaborative and open. It's pretty amazing. It's a great job.
Have the scores and the recordings become more expansive as based on the film and as we've moved forward with technology?
No, I don't think so. And I mean, Michael Dane is a good example of that. His score is so beautiful and eloquent, and yet so simple. He got it down to exactly what he needed to do to tell the story with the music. It's amazing. He did a beautiful job, and he won a Golden Globe for it. So.
No, he's quite the composer. I mean, I think that Pi's theme is just very haunting.
So Pi's Lullaby, oh my God, it's such a beautiful piece of music.
Well, now when you approach a film, like Life of Pi, how many tracks do you have to sort through? I mean, is it, because I think you talked a little earlier, it's like you're an editor and you have all these hours of footage and you have to pick and choose what you're going to use. The sound designer Eugene Garrity, who has worked with Aang, I think going back to the Ice Storm, right? I think he goes back that far. He'll sort of put together tracks and do a lot of really beautiful work. So as I'm mixing his material and whatnot, I'm just sort of balancing and finding the right focus and levels to play things at to make the story work. So it takes a village, let me tell you. About how long does it take for you how long did you work on Life of Pi?
Gee whiz, I would say 8 weeks, maybe.
Wow.
Whereas when I was on the mix of Apocalypse, I was in the machine room, which was a sort of technical job. I worked on that for a year.
Now, did you, when you were working on Apocalypse Now, what kind of feedback did you get from Coppola?
Well, that was, that was above my pay grade. That was Walter and Mark Berger and Richard Beggs were the mixers. They were the mixers.
Yeah.
But I felt I was working for Francis for his company, American Zoetrope, and it was really wonderful. I mean, I can't tell you what it felt like to be a film student working, at Francis Coppola's place. And I mean, he was so inclusive. If you had a party at his house, all the employees would be invited, and Christmas would come around, you get a basket of his wine or whatever. He was a great guy.
I love that Coppola Zinfandel.
Well, believe me, back then the wine wasn't that good.
Now, it must be pretty exciting as really a person that loves cinema, because you've worked on a lot of films that have really had a lot to say with the cultural landscape in American cinema. I mean, Blade Runner, and what a great score that was. A couple of months ago, they did a re-release where this guy went and he re-recorded all the tracks of Blade Runner, which was amazing. It was a soundtrack. I think it's like the 20th or 50th anniversary, something like that, of the soundtrack.
Well, we did obviously, there's economics involved here. We did the final whatever re-release of Blade Runner for Ridley. I think it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And there was, we were dealing with original mixes from the early 80s, which was a much different time, technology-wise. And there were 3 different mixes, I think. There was a mix done in England, there was a mix for the New Art Theater, and I don't know what that was. And then there was a mix that was done for a later release through Skywalker Sound. So we took those 3 mixes, and I mean, part of our goal with Blade Runner was to keep the original sort of, naivete of the track intact. Not to reinvent the wheel, because it really is. You're just doing a restoration. You're not reinventing the wheel, and it's really important to remember that sometimes on films, that part of what made it great might have been, the rawness of the track or whatever.
Mm-hmm. What about you?
It's like Touch of Evil is, an incredibly kind of rough track, with loops and ADR and the same wind sound, but you wouldn't want to change that because it's part of the charm of the movie.
Now, with once again, you're saying don't make a film on water, don't make a film with animals and kids or whatever you said earlier, and you've got that, because really part of the soundtrack is the ocean. Because,
right.
So that must present a challenge in itself based on doing something like The Dark Knight, which, now you're talking about more explosions, that type of thing.
Well, it's funny because on The Dark Knight, I did a temp mix, and I was booked, so I couldn't do the final mix. I was on Tropic Thunder. But Chris, the director, Chris Nolan, I came in and I said, well, Chris, when do I get to see the film? And he said, well, I'm not going to show you the film. I said, well, what do you mean? How can I do this temp mix if I haven't seen the movie? And he said, I want to see you respond to it as you watch it. And I said, all right, game on. And we had the best time. We had the most fun doing this 6-day temp mix on Dark Knight. It was a blast.
So is that kind of a common thing to do a temp mix? Because I know that composers will do temp tracks. But then I also hear that sometimes a temp track can be like they get caught into temp death,
Oh yeah.
So what?
Oh yeah, I've worked on films where, the temp track of music, because you're choosing. It depends on how you do it. If you're just pulling from every great music you've ever written, you can do a temp music track that is unmatchable. You can't. There's no way a composer can match that. So yeah, that can be very difficult. You have to be careful about that.
You worked on this other film that I thought was a lot of fun, The Cabin in the Woods.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your experience with that one. I thought that was really a clever film, the way they did it.
No, that's a great mashup. Well, it's weird because Drew Goddard is a terrific guy. He's an amazing person. Really good writer. And I was working with him, and I came in one day with a Los Lobos sweatshirt on because I'm a fan of the band. And he goes, Los Lobos, New Mexico. And I said, no, Los Lobos, the band. And I said, are you from New Mexico? And he said, yeah. And I said, where are you from? Because I love New Mexico. He said, Los Alamos. And I said, well, wait a minute. You're from Los Alamos. You're not related to Robert Goddard, are you? He said, yeah, that's my great uncle. So we got a good laugh out of that because he's, related to the father of American rocketry, and he's making Cabin in the Woods.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was it was pretty funny, but I love that film. It was just crazy. And that film was, the mix was definitely made under duress because at that time I think MGM had declared bankruptcy or whatever, and we had a bondsman on the stage, and it was pretty tough. We had to finish. It wasn't released. I wasn't released for I think a couple of years after we finished mixing it.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting sometimes how things can really change, and just the transitory nature of Hollywood, right?
Oh yeah.
How was working with Guy Ritchie on Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. No pun intended. We had worked on Rock and Rolla, and obviously been fans of his. So it was, he has a love of language that I think is unmatched. Just the musicality of language, the way he uses it, and I just really enjoy his work. So.
Is there a type of film that you won't work on, or is it? Like what are the types of projects that you look for that resonate the most with you?
Well, it really comes down to somebody, wants to be collaborative. If somebody wants to, have me put myself into the film and bring what I can to the table. And I say that, again, like an actor giving performances. It doesn't mean they're going to like everything I do, but it just means they want me to bring what I have to the film. If somebody doesn't want that, there's no point in me being there.
Right. Well, the nice thing about your body of work, you just don't do horror film. You really do a cross-section of genres. That's pretty cool for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's called making a living.
Well, and also, too, when so you're working on a film like Tropic Thunder, that film was hysterical. I mean, those must be a lot of fun to do those kinds of films, or do you kind of, once you kind of get into it?
That was fantastic. I mean, working with Ben Stiller, he's such a great guy. He really was just very open to what we wanted to do, and we wanted to use sounds that there's a funny thing we told him about. I don't know if you know the Bel Air sequence in Apocalypse where the little footbridge blows up, with a guy running across it and they rocket it and it blows up.
Oh, right, sure.
Yeah, and Walter Murch put some bowling pins in there. It's just a great sound. You'd have to listen to it to hear it, but they're definitely there. And we told Ben about that because he loves film. He's such a scholar when it comes to film. He's a total Trekkie and loves Star Trek. And we told him about the bowling pins, and he just was really into that, so he wanted us to put some bowling pins in front of the expo. So, yeah, we had so much fun on that film.
Well, there was a series that he did, I think it was on Fox, I just thought it was really, really a lot of fun, and it was a lot of parodies on films, but I think it only ran a season. But I think it was just a little too hip for television, Yeah,
he was that film. We just laughed so hard on it. It was just amazing.
So, are you excited about Oscars coming up?
Sure, absolutely. Anything that has to do with Life of Pi. You talk about films that come along and are sort of benchmarks, and for me, this is one of them. It's just such a wonderful piece of work, and I have such respect for Ang Lee. He's an amazing person.
What does it resonate for you? When you think about your work on this film, what is the one touchstone that you take away from this project?
That's interesting because if I was to take away anything from this film, it would be the fact that I was there and supportive and believed in what Ang was doing and worked very hard and put myself into the movie. I felt what he was doing and trying to get across, I think. And for me, that's what I take away from the film.
Do you think it was, like he's using all these different elements, but do you think it was a hard sell to get this film made?
Oh, God. You said a mouthful there.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And believe me, very difficult film to make. Very difficult.
Yeah.
Logistically, just unbelievable.
I was really impressed with the 3D. I kind of got a little burnt out on the 3D, but I loved Avatar, and I saw the Hobbit 3D in the 48 frames, but and it was like the putting on those sunglasses just darkened the image, but with this Life of Pi, it's just fluid. It just really enhances the cinematic experience. So I think that it just, I don't know, I just found the whole thing just really quite amazing.
It is, and I got to say, for movie lovers out there, it's only going to get better and better as far as, presentation and what's going to be available out there. It's just going to, we're going to have 8K screens, and it's just going to be amazing.
Well, now I've heard that they're going to start pretty soon. Everything will just be digital, right? I mean, the signal will be digital, and but the quality,
right.
It's going to change.
But it's really the ultimate mandate of the filmmaker or whatever to take digital technology and make it human. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that goes for sound and picture and all those elements to make it somehow an aesthetic experience for the theater goer.
What do you think it is about you that has given you such a long career? What's your secret, Doug?
I don't know. I like film. I love movies. I love stories, and I like to work with people. It's really that simple. And I'm a problem solver. I go in and I don't waste time on stuff that doesn't have anything to do with solving the problems that's put in front of me. So that's how I approach it.
Well, do you have anything else to add? And we're just so stoked that you were able to take time out and join us on our little radio station here.
Well, thank you. I just want to say how much I appreciate all the people out there that have supported Life Up High and what I tried to do. So I thank you.
Are you ready for your acceptance speech?
Oh, I never go to the Oscars thinking that. I just won't do it. It's too much of a setup. You really have to go to those award shows and just take joy in the people who do win and their happiness. And you can't go there thinking you're going to win at all. It's just really not a good approach. I mean, the work we did was the work we did, and we're proud of it, and we know that it was good. And I don't know, it's if it helps the film, it's great to be honored and all that, but dangerous thing to go there thinking you're going to win or whatever.
But does the Oscar, is that like just the ultimate validation that it was the right decision, and it's the acknowledgement that what you did,
No.
not?
I mean, all due respect, Ang Lee telling me that I did a great job was the validation that means the most to me. My peers, my friends, the people that got into the lifeboat with Ang and did this, that means the most to me, really. And I'm not trying to take away from being nominated. I think it's great. It's wonderful, and it means a lot to me. But you just get really close to people in a film like this, and what they think and feel means the most to me.
If you would like more information about Doug Hemphill, visit imdb.com. Until next time, this is Mark Gordon, and I'll see you center stage.
Hello, this is Homer Simpson. Whenever I want to know what's going on in the entertainment world, I listen to Center Stage with Mark Gordon.